A tree fort is an awesome thing to build. It's fun to build, and it's just a fun place for kids to run around and play in the woods. This tree fort has lasted many years with zero maintenance, and with some planning, you can make one too. We can break down how to build a tree fort in a few steps. The first step is planning. Decide on a location. Is this something that you want to stare at for years, or do you want it relatively hidden? I wanted a low-profile fort that was relatively hard to see, so that was the primary determination with the location. Next, decide what kind of supports you want to use for the main structure. I researched tree-mounted systems and was surprised how expensive some of the mounting bolts can be since they allow for motion and growth of trees. I instead went with the ground-mounted system, independent from the trees. I still wanted the feel of a tree fort, so I planned the platforms around the trees. Next, decide on the platform height. I wanted it tall enough for kids to run underneath without hitting their heads, but not too tall where I had to worry about kids falling and injuring themselves. The next step is deciding materials. I chose green treated pine in standard dimensions to help reduce the costs. What I found to be the most economical dimensions were 4x4 posts, 4x6 beams, and 2x6 joists. I had to double or triple up some of the joists across the long spans. There are structural tables on the internet that help determine if you need to do this or not, depending on the size and the type of wood you're using and the distance you need to span. In hindsight, I probably wouldn't do a pentagon shape again due to this reason. The decking is standard decking planks with the longest board being about 10 feet long. I tried to keep the decking to not more than 8 feet wide, as there seemed to be a big price jump when you start getting lengths greater than 8 feet. With green treated wood, all the screws, bolts, and brackets need to be zinc coated and rated to be in contact with green treated wood to reduce corrosion. You can't just use any screw, nail, or bolt. Although green treated wood withstands weather very well, I dipped each post in tar and buried each one 2 feet into the ground on top of gravel and cemented each in place. Ideally, you should bury each post below the frost line of 3 to 4 feet deep, but I didn't do that, and this fort has held up to many winters so far with minimal shifting. Again, the joists are held in place with hurricane brackets or joist ties, and some of the corners are reinforced with metal angle brackets. Blocks between the joists help keep them from twisting and keeps them evenly spaced. Be sure to leave space between the decking boards to allow water to drain. I cut the decking close enough around each tree where a kid couldn't fall through, but with enough room to allow the tree to sway in the wind. The fence posts were made of green treated fence posts upside down to have the pointy side up and bolted into place. With the double platform system, a rigid bridge wouldn't allow for independent movement, so I decided on a swinging bridge. The swinging bridge is held up with double steel cables attached to each board with a cable bracket on the underside, which worked out well. I wanted a low-profile fence around and found an inexpensive fishing net from a fishing supply store in Maine that fit perfectly around the entire perimeter. The net was held in place with fencing staples and has held up amazingly well over the years. I hung a swing on the underside with some spare supplies and a cargo net on the other side and a ladder to get up to the main platform. The ladder comes up through a fun hatch, mostly because I didn't want a break in the fencing. One problem with the hatch is that it was a bit heavy for the little kids and had the risk of slamming down on their fingers. To solve this, I used a piston to help with the lifting and the closing, which worked out well. This tree fort was built in 2015 and has held up remarkably well with no maintenance. One of the ground posts for the cargo net rotted and fell down, but that's the only issue I've had in all those years. The total cost was about $600 in 2015. Again, if you keep to the dimensions to standard lengths, you'll save quite a bit. It has been years of fun and was completely worth it. But just don't cut corners when making it safe. And planning before you start helps out quite a bit.